Chapter 30. Though Ethan was standing, I tried to leap into his lap. I lunged up, straining to lick him, nuzzle him, climb on him. I couldn't stop the sobs coming from my throat. I couldn't keep my tail from flying. "Hey," he said, backing away and blinking. He tried to steady himself on his cane, and then he sat down heavily on the floor. I jumped on him, licking his face. He pushed my mouth away. Okay, grumbled. "Stop it, okay." The feel of his hands on my face was the most wonderful sensation I'd ever encountered in my life. I half closed my eyes with the pleasure of it. Get back now, get back," he said. The boy laboriously climbed back to his feet. I pressed my face into his hand, and he briefly stroked me. "Okay, goodness, who are you?" He snapped on another light, peering at me. "Whoa, you're skinny one. Doesn't anybody feed you, huh? Are you lost or something?" I could sit there all night and just listen to his voice and feel his gaze on me, but it wasn't to be. "Well, look, you can't come inside." He opened the outer door and held it. "Out now. Go on outside." It was a command I recognized, so reluctantly, I went. He stood and looked at me through the glass. I sat expectantly. "You're going to have to go home, dog," he said. I wagged. I knew I was go home. I was finally go home on the farm where I belonged, with Ethan, where I belonged. He shut the door. I waited obediently until the strain was just too much, and then yipped a bark full of impatience and frustration. When there was no response, I yipped again, giving the metal door a good pawing as well. I'd lost count of how many times I'd barked when the door opened again. Ethan was carrying a metal pan, succulent odors wafting off of it. "Here," he muttered. "You hungry, buddy?" As soon as he set the pan down, I dove into the dinner, bolting the food. "It's mostly lasagna. I don't have much in the way of dog food around here. You look like you're not fussy, though." I wagged. "You can't live here, though. I can't have a dog. I don't have time for it. You're going to have to go home." I wagged. "Good Lord, when was the last time you ate?" "Don't eat so fast. You'll make yourself sick." I wagged. When I was done, Ethan bent slowly down to pick up the pan. I licked his face. "Yuck, you have really bad breath. You know that?" He wiped his sleeve on his face and stood back up. I watched him, ready to do anything he wanted. Go for a walk? Go for a car ride? Play with the stupid flip? "Okay, then, you go on home. Dog like you obviously isn't a mutt. Somebody must be looking for you. Okay, good night." Ethan shut the door. I sat there for a few minutes. When I barked, the light over my head went off with a click. I went around to the small grassy hill by the side of the house and looked into the living room. Ethan was moving slowly across the floor, leaning on his cane, turning off one light after another. My boy was so old, I never would have recognized him. But now that I knew it was him, the gait was familiar, if more stiff, and the way he turned his head and peered out into the night before snapping off the final lamp, ears cocked as if listening for something, was pure Ethan. I was confused over being an outside dog, but the food in my belly and the exhaustion in my limbs soon overtook me, and I curled up on the spot, tucking my nose near my tail even though the night was warm. I was home. When Ethan came outside the next morning, I shook myself off and ran over to him, trying to restrain myself from showering so much affection on him. He stared at me. "Why are you still here, huh, boy? What are you doing here?" I followed him into the barn where he led a horse I'd never seen before out into the yard. Naturally, the dumb animal didn't react when he saw me, just gazed at me the way Flair used to, no comprehension registering. "I'm a dog, you idiot." I marked the yard while Ethan gave the horse some oats. "How are you doing today, Troy? You miss Jasper, don't you? You miss your pal, Jasper." Ethan was talking to the horse, which I could have told him was a complete waste of time. He stroked the horse's nose, calling him Troy and mentioning the name Jasper more than once, though when I went into the barn, the donkey wasn't there, just his smell. Jasper's scent was particularly strong in the trailer. That was a sad day, the day I had to take Jasper in. He lived a good long time, though. 44 is pretty old for a little donkey. I felt sorrow in Ethan and muzzled his hand. He regarded me absently, his mind somewhere else. He gave Troy a final pat and went back into the house. A few hours later, I was sniffing around the yard, waiting for Ethan to come out to play, when a truck swung up into the driveway. As soon as it stopped, I recognized it as the one I'd seen in the parking lot of the dog park, and the man who eased himself out of the front seat was the same policeman I'd smelled who'd been probing the bushes with the pole and noose, which he now grabbed from the back of the truck. "You won't need that," Ethan called, stepping outside. I turned from the man and went wagging over to my boy. "He's really cooperative." "Just wandered up last night," the policeman replied. "That's right. Look at the ribs on the poor animal. You can tell he's a purebred, but someone sure hasn't been treating him right. We've heard reports of a nice-looking Labrador running loose down at the city park. Wonder if this is the same one," the policeman said. "Don't know about that. Pretty far," Ethan replied dubiously. The man opened a cage on the back of his truck. "You think he'll just go in? I'm not in the mood to chase him down." "Hey, dog, up here, okay? Up here." Ethan patted the inside of the open cage. I regarded him curiously for a moment and then gave a little leap, landing lightly inside. If that's what the boy wanted me to do, that's what I'd do. I would do anything for my boy. Appreciate it, the policeman said. He swung the cage door shut. So what happens now? Ethan asked. Oh, a dog like that will be adopted out pretty easy, I imagine. Well, would they call me? Let me know? He's a really nice animal. I'd like to know he's okay. I don't know about that. You'll have to call the shelter, ask them to notify you. My job is to just pick them up. That's what I'll do then. The policeman and the boy shook hands. Ethan came over to my cage as the policeman slid into the front of the truck. I put my nose up against the bars, trying to make contact, breathing in Ethan's scent. You take care of yourself, okay, buddy? Ethan said softly. You need a nice home with kids to play with. I'm just an old man. I was astounded when we drove off, Ethan still standing there watching us go. I couldn't help myself. I started barking, and I barked and barked all the way down the driveway and down the road past Hannah's and beyond. This new development left me bewildered and heartbroken. Why was I being taken from Ethan? Was he sending me away? When would I see him again? I wanted to be with my boy. I was taken to a building full of dogs, many of whom barked with fear all day long. I was put in a cage by myself, and within a day I was wearing a stupid plastic collar and had a familiar pain in my groin. Was this why I was here? When was Ethan coming to take me for the car ride home? Every time someone passed my cage, I leaped to my feet, expecting it to be the boy. As the days wore on, I sometimes gave voice to my frustration, joining the non-stop chorus of barking that rang off the walls. Where was Ethan? Where was my boy? The people who fed me and took care of me were gentle and kind, and I have to admit that I so craved human contact, I went to them whenever one of them opened my cage, offering my head for stroking. When a family with 3 young girls came to visit me in a small room, I climbed into their laps and rolled on my back. So desperate was I to feel human hands on my body. Can we keep him, Daddy? One of the girls asked. The affection pouring off the 3 children made me squirm. He is as black as coal, the mother of the family said. Coley, the father said. He held my head, looking at my teeth, and then lifted my front paws one by one. I knew what this meant. I'd been through this type of examination before. A cold fear grew in my stomach. No, I couldn't go home with these people. I belonged to the boy. Coley, Coley, the girls chanted. I regarded them numbly, their adoration no longer welcome. Let's go to lunch, the man said. Daddy! But then when we're done, we'll come back and take Coley for a car ride, he finished. Yay! I heard the words car ride clearly, but was relieved when, after a lot more hugging from the girls, the family left. I was put back in my cage and curled up for a nap, a little mystified. I remembered when Maya and I did school, how it was my job to sit and let children pet me. Maybe this was the same thing, only now the children would be coming to me. I didn't mind. What was important was that I had been wrong. The family had not been here to take me away with them. I would wait for my boy. Human motivation is unfathomable to dogs, so I wasn't sure why the 2 of us were separated, but I knew that when the time came, Ethan would find me. Good news, boy. You've got a new home, the woman who fed me said as she passed in a bowl of fresh water. They'll be back soon and we'll get you out of this place for good. I knew it wouldn't take long. I wagged and let her scratch my ears, licking her hand, sharing her happy spirits. Yes, I thought in reply to her good mood, I am still here. I'm going to call that man who brought you in. He'll be happy to hear we found you a good family. When she left, I circled around a few times and settled down for a nap, back to waiting patiently for the boy. Half an hour later, I sat bolt upright out of my sleep. A man's voice had just come to me, an angry voice. Ethan, I barked. My dog, my property. I've changed my mind, he was shouting. I stopped barking and held perfectly still. I could sense him on the other side of the wall, and I stared at the door, willing it to open so I could smell him. And a minute later it did, the woman who had given me water leading the boy down the hallway. I put my paws upon the cage, wagging. The woman was furious. I could sense it. Those children are going to be so disappointed, she said. She opened my cage, and I lunged out, crushing myself against the boy, wagging and licking and whimpering. The woman's anger left her as she watched. Well then, she said, my goodness. Ethan stood at the counter for a few minutes, writing something down while I sat patiently at his feet and tried not to paw him. Then we were outside the door and in the front seat of the car for a car ride. Though it had been a long time since I'd had the wonderful thrill of a car ride with my nose out the window, what I wanted most was to put my head in Ethan's lap and feel his hand stroke me, so that's what I did. You really do forgive me, don't you, buddy? I gave him an alert look. I put you in jail and you don't care at all. We drove a bit in comfortable silence. I wondered if we were headed to the farm. You are a good dog, the boy finally said. I wagged with pleasure. Okay, well, let's stop and get you some dog food.